They thought a single signature could wipe me out. That thin line on a forged medical report, meant to claim I'd lost my sanity, was supposed to finish me. According to that paper, I was unstable, confused, unfit to manage my own life. What it was really meant to do was take everything: my house, my history, my name. But I didn't live through 61 winters and bury the love of my life just to be discarded like something past its expiry date. This isn't a revenge story, it's a reckoning. So if you're listening, stay with me, because what comes next is how a so-called unstable older woman watched, waited, and acted. I didn't yell, I didn't plead, I watched, and then I acted. The wedding hall glowed under crystal fixtures, white flowers spilling from every corner as if the room itself had been dipped in fantasy. Tables were draped in linen so crisp it looked untouched. Centerpieces arranged with the kind of precision that suggested planners, not family. Music floated through the air, soft and steady, while guests laughed with the easy confidence of people who believed nothing bad could happen that night. I stood just past the curve of a marble column, gripping a champagne glass as though it were the only thing keeping me grounded. I hadn't taken a single sip. At 61, I had perfected the art of smiling through sorrow, through loss, disappointment, betrayal. I had done it at funerals, birthdays, anniversaries. Still, nothing prepared me for what I overheard that night. "We just need 1 or 2 more incidents," Ria's voice said quietly. "Confusion. Maybe she forgets a name in public. Once it's documented, she's done." Another woman laughed softly, the sound careful. "Isn't that a bit much?" "She's had small episodes before," Ria replied. "Noah said she forgot his birthday last year. We just need a little push. Then she's out, and the coastal house is ours." The coastal house. The one Mark and I poured our life savings into. The one we bought when Noah was still in school, when we believed Thai was something we had plenty of. Weathered walls, windows that hummed when the ocean wind pushed through them, a porch that always needed repainting, the place where Noah learned to swim, the place where Mark's ashes were scattered 5 years earlier. My chest tightened, but my expression didn't crack. Not yet. I turned back into the crowd, slipping between dresses and dark suits with the quiet ease of someone who didn't want to be noticed. Waiters passed with trays balanced on one hand. Someone called my name from across the room, but I pretended not to hear it. Across the hall, Ria caught my eye and waved too bright, too rehearsed. I waved back. To anyone watching, it looked like pride, like approval. Inside, something had taken shape. At the bar, I ordered a whiskey, neat, something harsher than champagne, something that didn't pretend to be celebratory. I welcomed the burn as it carved its way down my throat and settled there. After Mark died, when Noah could barely function, it was me who sat beside him night after night. I stayed when his friends stopped calling. I reminded him to eat when he forgot. I listened when he repeated the same fears again and again. I held his hand through the worst of it, long after everyone else assumed he was fine. I remembered those nights as clearly as if they were happening again. Sound of the refrigerator at 3 a.m, the way Noah stared at the floor when he spoke, the weight of his grief pressing into the room. I remembered promising myself that I would protect him, no matter how long it took. Then Ria arrived. Beautiful, polished, attentive to a fault. The kind of woman who praised your home while quietly rearranging it when she thought you weren't looking. The kind who noticed which relatives mattered and which ones didn't. She knew how to make people feel important right before planning how to replace them. "I'm so lucky to be joining this family," she told me during our 3rd dinner together. "You and Noah are so close. I just hope I can find my place." I smiled, nodding past the discomfort twisting in my gut. It wasn't the words, it was the delivery. Every movement too precise, every sentence perfectly timed. Nothing spontaneous, nothing unguarded. Over time, Ria wrapped herself around Noah's life. She began managing his schedule, answering messages meant for him, organizing holidays I wasn't invited to. She suggested that weekly check-ins with his mother might be a bit much for an adult man. She framed it as concern, as balance. And I let it happen. If Noah's happy, I'll adapt, I told myself. Standing there in that wedding hall, hearing, "Then she's out," was like watching a spark land on decades of dry wood. All the moments I'd brushed aside lined up at once. Clinic visit, the paperwork offers, the gentle jokes about my memory. I set my glass down harder than intended. The sharp clink cut through the noise just enough to draw the bartender's attention. "Sorry," I said softly. I wasn't. Noah stood near the dance floor, laughing with Ria's uncle. He looked relaxed, happy, but happiness built on deception never holds. I watched the way he leaned toward her voice even when she wasn't speaking, the way he checked her face before responding to anyone else. My thoughts returned to the afternoon Ria insisted we visit a small clinic. "It'll give a peace of mind," she said, "just to have it on record." I hadn't questioned it then. I trusted my son. I trusted his wife. I hadn't seen the danger, now I did. That appointment hadn't been harmless, it was evidence. I stepped out onto the balcony, the cold night air cutting across my skin and clearing my head. Inside, the music still played, dulled by thick glass doors and polite applause. I could see my reflection faintly in the glass, upright, composed, older than I used to be, but not confused. I took out my phone, opened the voice memo app, and started speaking. "If anything happens to me, if I'm hospitalized or declared unfit, please listen to this. My name is Ellen Ward. I am of sound mind, and tonight, at my son's wedding, I overheard my daughter-in-law, Ria Cole, describing a plan to have me committed so she can gain access to my property. She referenced a past memory test as proof and intends to manufacture further incidents to establish incompetence." I paused, then added quietly, "This isn't paranoia, this is preparation." I saved the recording and stood there for another full minute, letting the air steady me. When I returned to the hall, I moved with care. I congratulated relatives, I accepted hugs, I thanked people for coming. Every smile was placed where it belonged. Inside my head, everything stayed sharp. I noticed Noah glance toward me and then look away. That hurt more than I expected. Later, as the evening thinned and guests drifted toward the exits, a woman touched my arm. "Ellen, is that really you?" I turned and recognized her slowly. "Fran." "We were in book club years ago," she said, smiling. Then her expression changed. She leaned closer. "This might sound strange, but your daughter-in-law, Ria, is that her name?" "Yes," I said. "My uncle knew her," Fran whispered. "She helped him manage his affairs. He signed papers. A few months later, he ended up in a care facility. She disappeared." My stomach tightened. "Different hair," Fran added. "Same voice." I thanked her and excused myself before my composure cracked. I left the wedding early, blaming exhaustion. I kissed Noah's cheek. He stiffened slightly. Ria smiled and told me to sleep well. I drove home without turning on the radio. That night, I opened the leather journal Mark gave me years ago. I hadn't written in it since his funeral. Now I wrote everything down: dates, conversations, expressions, the clinic visit, Fran's warning, Ria's words. I wrote until my hand ached and the house went quiet around me. Alone, each detail meant nothing. Together they told a story, and I was done pretending not to see it. The first time Ria came into my life, I told myself I was imagining things. Noah brought her over on a Sunday afternoon, late spring, the kind of day Mark would have insisted on grilling even if the clouds threatened rain. I remember that detail because I'd already prepped vegetables that morning, chopping more than I needed out of habit. When Noah knocked, I was still rinsing lettuce in the sink. "Mum," he said when I opened the door, smiling in a way that felt slightly rehearsed. "This is Ria." She stepped forward before I could speak, hand outstretched, smile already in place. Firm handshake. Eye contact held just long enough. "I've heard so much about you," she said. "Noah talks about you all the time." That should have made me happy. Instead, something tightened in my chest. I invited them in, wiped my hands on a towel, apologized for the mess even though the house was clean. Ria noticed everything. The framed photo of Mark and me by the hallway mirror, the book stacked upside down on the coffee table, the way Noah automatically went to the fridge like it was still his home. She asked questions, but not the kind people ask when they're curious. These were inventory questions. How long had I lived there? Did the house need much maintenance? Was it paid off? I answered lightly, the way you do when you don't want to sound defensive. I told myself she was just trying to know me, that I was being unfair. At the table, Noah talked about work, a contract that might turn permanent. Ria filled in details when he paused, corrected him once when he misremembered a date. He didn't seem to notice. After lunch, while Noah helped me clear the plates, Ria wandered the living room. She paused at the bookshelf, ran a finger along the spines. "You keep everything," she said pleasantly. "I do," I replied. "It helps me remember." She smiled at that, a little too quickly. "That's smart." I told myself not to read into it. After Mark died, I learned what quiet really sounded like. The house didn't echo the way people imagine. It didn't feel haunted, it just felt unfinished, like a sentence cut off in the middle. Noah stayed with me for months. He slept in his old room, the one we never repainted. Some mornings he didn't come out until noon. Some days he didn't come out at all. I didn't push. I learned early that grief doesn't move faster just because you ask it to. I made meals he barely touched. I sat beside him while he stared at the television without seeing it. I listened when he talked about Mark and when he didn't. People praised me for being strong. They didn't see the nights I cried quietly in the laundry room so he wouldn't hear. When Noah finally moved out, I didn't celebrate. I worried, but I told myself this was how things were supposed to go. Parents let go, children move forward. Then Ria arrived and Noah stopped leaning toward me. Not all at once, gradually. Phone calls that used to come every Sunday shifted to every other week, then once a month. When I asked how he was doing, his answers grew shorter, more general. "Busy. Good, we're figuring things out." When I suggested lunch, Ria's schedule always seemed to matter more than his. "She's got a lot going on," he said once. "Her projects, her planning." I nodded. I didn't argue. The first paperwork conversation happened over tea. Ria brought pastries from a bakery I didn't like, but pretended to enjoy. She sat at my table like she belonged there, knees tucked neatly together, phone face down beside her plate. "You should really simplify things," she said casually, stirring her tea, "just to make life easier." "Things?" I asked. "Accounts, documents, emergency contacts." She smiled. "You don't want Noah scrambling if something happens." I laughed it off. "I'm not planning a disappearing anytime soon." "Of course not," she said quickly. "I just mean planning ahead." She offered to help organize my files, suggested digitizing records, mentioned that she knew someone who worked with older clients. I declined. Politely. She didn't push. Then. The memory test came months later. Ria framed it as a favor, a friend of a friend situation. A small private clinic that offered cognitive screenings without long waits. "No pressure," she said. "I just thought it might be nice to have baseline results, for peace of mind." I agreed because Noah asked me to. That mattered. The test itself was uneventful. Lists of words, simple puzzles, questions about dates and names. I left feeling mildly insulted, more amused than concerned. The report arrived by email weeks later. I skimmed it and filed it away. I didn't know then that it wouldn't stay untouched. The Maple Street house entered the conversation after Noah lost his job. It was an investment property I'd bought years earlier. Small, practical, paid for. I offered it to him without thinking too hard. "Stay there until you get back on your feet," I said. "No rush." Ria thanked me repeatedly, told everyone how generous I was. They moved in and redecorated within a month. Neutral colors replaced what I'd chosen. New furniture arrived. Bills stopped coming to my address. I told myself it was temporary. The distance grew. I heard updates about Noah's life through Ria, what he was working on, what he was thinking, what he needed. When I spoke directly to him, he deferred to her, looked at her before answering questions meant for him. Once, when I asked about contributing to expenses at the Maple Street house, he grew quiet. "Ria's handling that," he said. By the time the wedding invitations went out, I already felt like a guest in my own family. Ria controlled the seating, the schedule, the conversations. I smiled. I showed up. I told myself this was what letting go looked like. But standing in that hall, hearing my future discussed like a transaction, I finally understood. This hadn't happened suddenly. It had been planned, slowly, carefully, right in front of me. After the wedding, nothing exploded. That was the part that surprised me. There was no confrontation, no dramatic fallout, no sudden shift that anyone else could point to and say, "That's when things went wrong." Instead, life continued in the same careful pattern it had already settled into. Polite messages, cancelled plans, small adjustments presented as concern. I started paying closer attention. Ria's messages arrived at consistent times. Mid-morning, early evening, never late at night. She checked in just often enough to seem thoughtful. "How are you feeling today? Did you sleep okay? Don't forget your appointment tomorrow." Each one read as kindness. Together, they formed something else. The first thing I noticed was what stopped happening. Bills that had always come to my house didn't arrive anymore. Utility statements, investment summaries, even a holiday card from my bank went missing. When I called to ask about it, the representative sounded confused. "We have a new mailing preference on file," she said. "Everything's been redirected to digital only." "That wasn't my request," I replied. There was a pause. Keyboard clicks. "Well, it was authorized," she said carefully. "We can switch it back if you'd like." I asked her when the change was made. She gave me the date. It lined up exactly with the week Ria had offered to help me organize paperwork. I didn't confront her. I wrote it down instead. When I visited the Maple Street house, the changes were subtle but complete. My furniture was gone, not stored, not covered, gone. Ria noticed me looking. "Oh, we donated most of it," she said easily. "It didn't really fit our layout." "Our," I repeated. She smiled. "You don't mind, do you?" I told her it was fine. It wasn't. The first time Noah missed our standing lunch without calling, I waited. The second time, I asked. He hesitated before answering. "Ria thought it might be better if we didn't keep fixed schedules," he said. "You know, less pressure." I knew exactly whose pressure he meant. The memory test came back into conversation the following month. Ria brought it up casually while we were walking from the car to my front door. "I was thinking about that screening you did," she said. "It might be good to share the results with your primary doctor, just so everyone's on the same page." "I already reviewed it," I said. There was nothing concerning. She nodded. "Of course. I just mean sometimes doctors read things differently." I didn't respond. That night I pulled the report out of my file drawer. I read it slowly, line by line. Some of it was exactly as I remembered. The test results, the scores, the neutral language. Other parts were unfamiliar. A note about occasional confusion, a phrase suggesting early indicators, a recommendation for follow-up I had never received. The formatting was slightly off, so was the timestamp. I checked the metadata. The file had been edited. I printed everything. When I called the clinic, they transferred me twice before someone finally spoke to me in a lowered voice. "Yes," the woman said. "Your file shows an update." "By whom?" I asked. Another pause. "It appears to have been entered by a listed caregiver," she said. I already knew the answer. "Who?" "Rhea Cole." I thanked her. I hung up. I sat very still. After that, the comments from others started making sense. A neighbor asked if I was driving less. A cousin called to ask if I was feeling overwhelmed. At the grocery store, a cashier offered help with my card before I asked for it. None of them were rude. That was the point. Rhea never accused me of anything directly. She didn't have to. She framed everything as concern, as help, as preparation. "I just worry about you being alone so much. Wouldn't it be easier if Noah handled more things? Sometimes stress can make memory worse." Each sentence stood on its own. Together, they built a picture I hadn't consented to. I started keeping duplicates. Every document, every message, every appointment reminder. I wrote dates in the margins. I noted times. I saved voicemails. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. One afternoon, Rhea showed up unannounced. She brought soup, homemade. She placed it on my counter like an offering. "I thought you might forget to eat," she said gently. I looked at the container. I looked at her. "I didn't," I said. She smiled. "Of course." Her phone stayed face up the entire visit. Before she left, she mentioned something new. "There are some really nice assisted living communities opening up," she said. "Not facilities, more like wellness environments." "I'm not interested," I replied. She nodded, already stepping toward the door, just planting the idea. That night, I added a new section to my journal. Patterns. I listed everything. The timing of messages, the edited report, the redirected mail, the missing furniture, the language she used when she talked about me, the way Noah repeated it. By the time I closed the journal, my hand hurt, but my head was clear. This wasn't care, it was positioning. And it was happening slowly enough that anyone watching from the outside would have missed it. Anyone except me. The Maple Street house stopped feeling like mine long before anyone said it out loud. At first, it was just the silence. I used to receive small updates without asking how the plumbing was holding up, whether the heater made noise, what repairs might be needed down the line. After Noah and Rhea moved in, those updates disappeared. When I asked, the answers were vague. "It's fine," Noah said. "Nothing urgent." Rhea nodded along. "We've got it handled." Handled by whom exactly was never clear. I visited on a Thursday afternoon unannounced. That wasn't something I used to feel the need to explain. I'd owned the place for years. I still paid the taxes. But as soon as I rang the bell, I knew I'd crossed an invisible line. Rhea opened the door with a smile that flickered before settling. "Oh, hi, Ellen." No invitation followed. I stepped inside anyway. The living room looked like a magazine spread. Clean lines, neutral colors, none of my things. The couch I'd bought secondhand was gone. So was the lamp Mark insisted on keeping, even after it stopped matching anything. "We donated most of the old furniture," Rhea said, noticing my expression. It just made sense. She said it as if the decision had been obvious, as if I would have agreed. I nodded. "I would have liked to know." She tilted her head. "We didn't think you'd mind." Noah came out of the back room a moment later, surprised to see me. "Mom, you didn't say you were coming by." "I didn't know I had to," I replied. He looked at Ria before answering. "We've been busy." We sat at the table. Coffee was offered. I declined. "I wanted to talk about the house," I said. Ria folded her hands neatly. Noah leaned back in his chair. "What about it?" he asked. "The arrangement," I said. "We agreed this was temporary." Ria spoke before he could. "We're still settling in. With Noah's work situation, things have been tight." I waited. "But once things stabilize," she continued, "we absolutely plan to contribute." "How long is temporary?" I asked. Noah sighed. "Mom, can we not do this right now?" "I'm doing it now because we haven't done it at all," I said. That was the first time Ria's expression hardened. "That much, just enough." "You know," she said carefully, "this kind of stress isn't good for you." I looked at her. "Stress?" "Yes. These conversations, money, pressure." I turned to Noah. "Do you agree?" He hesitated. "Too long." "I just don't want you getting overwhelmed," he said finally. I left shortly after. In the car, my hands shook for the first time since the wedding. 2 weeks later, the utility company called me. They wanted to confirm a billing change. "The account holder has requested autopay from a different source," the representative said. "Which source?" I asked. She read out an account number. It wasn't mine. I drove to my bank that afternoon. The teller recognized me. We'd spoken often over the years. "There have been some changes," she said carefully, pulling up my file. I watched her face as she scrolled. "Someone added a note suggesting you may need assistance managing transactions," she continued. "It didn't authorize changes on its own, but it flags the account internally." "Who added it?" I asked. She hesitated. "A listed family contact." I knew. That evening, Noah came by my house alone. He looked tired, not angry, just worn. "Ria says you're upset," he said. "I'm observant," I replied. He rubbed his face. "She's just trying to help." "With what?" "With everything," he said vaguely. "She worries about you." I sat down across from him. "Has she told you I'm unwell?" He didn't answer right away. "She mentioned the clinic report," he said. "And that stress can make things worse." I nodded. "Did she tell you she edited it?" His head snapped up. "What?" "She altered my medical file," I said. "Without my consent." "That doesn't make sense," he said quickly. "Why would she?" "To protect you," I said. He stared at me. "From what?" I held his gaze. "From me." He left shortly after, shaken but unconvinced. The next week, the for sale sign went up. Not on my house, on Maple Street. I didn't warn them. I didn't ask permission. It was mine. Noah called within an hour. "You're selling the house?" he asked. "Yes." "You didn't even tell us." "I didn't need to." Ria's voice cut in on the other end. "Ellen, this feels impulsive." "It's been a year," I said. "That's not impulsive." "You know this will disrupt things," she said. "Yes," I replied. "It will." They came over that night. Ria cried. Noah argued. Both of them accused me of being unreasonable. "You promised we had time," Noah said. "I promised temporary," I replied. Ria clasped her hands together. "You're making decisions without thinking them through." "I've thought about this carefully," I said. "You don't seem yourself," she said softly. That sentence landed exactly where she intended it to. I handed Noah a folder. Inside was the lease agreement, signed, dated, notarized. He stared at it. "I thought this was just for insurance." "All paperwork is just paperwork," I said, "until it's needed." Ria didn't speak after that. Her eyes moved, calculating. Within days, a letter arrived from a lawyer. It mentioned emotional distress. requested a delay, referenced concerns about my mental state. I forwarded it to my attorney. He responded with documents of his own. The sale continued. Neighbors began asking questions. "Are you okay? Do you need help with anything?" each one said kindly. Each one echoed the same doubt. That was when I understood something important. The house wasn't the real issue, it was leverage. And by taking it back, I had forced Ria to move faster than she wanted. That was a mistake she wouldn't make quietly. The rumors didn't arrive all at once. They filtered in slowly, carried by concern, disguised as kindness, spoken softly enough that no one felt responsible for repeating them. The first one reached me through a neighbor. She stopped me near the mailbox one morning, holding a stack of envelopes against her chest like a shield. "Ella," she said gently, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you doing all right?" "I'm fine," I replied. She nodded but didn't move on. "I just heard you've been under a lot of stress lately." "Heard from whom?" She smiled apologetically. "Oh, you know, people worry." People always worried. The second came from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. She called in the middle of the afternoon, her voice overly careful. "I just wanted to check in," she said. "No reason, just checking." "I appreciate it," I replied. There was a pause. "Are you managing everything okay?" "Everything. You know, the house, bills, decisions." I closed my eyes. "Yes." She sounded relieved but not convinced. By the third call, the pattern was clear. No one accused me of anything. They didn't need to. Concern did the work for them. At the grocery store, the cashier offered to help before I asked. "With the card reader," she said, smiling. "Sometimes it can be confusing." I inserted my card without comment. At the pharmacy, the technician spoke louder than necessary, repeating instructions twice. At church, a woman I barely knew squeezed my hand and said, "We're all here for you." I smiled every time. Inside, I counted. Ria never confronted me directly. She didn't need to. She let other people carry the message. When Noah stopped by one evening, I could see it in his posture before he said a word. He sat on the edge of the couch instead of settling in. His hands stayed clasped together. "People are asking about you," he said. "Who?" "Friends. Family." "Because?" He hesitated. "Ria mentioned you've been overwhelmed." I nodded. "That's not what they're asking." He looked down. "They just want to help." "Help with what?" He didn't answer. That night, I pulled out my journal again. I added a new heading, isolation. I wrote down every interaction, dates, names, phrases, not opinions, words. 2 days later, I received an email from my bank. Subject line, account review notice. The message was polite, routine. It informed me that due to internal flags, certain transactions might require additional verification going forward. I called immediately. "This happens sometimes," the representative explained, "when there are concerns about capacity." "Whose concerns?" She paused. A family contact raised them. I drove to the branch the next morning. In person, everything looked different. The smiles were tighter, the conversation slower. "We're just being cautious," the manager said. "About what? About protecting you? From myself?" He didn't answer. When I left, I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. This was the part people never warned you about, not the loss of freedom, the erosion of credibility. Ria stopped by later that week with lunch. She placed the containers on my counter, unpacking them methodically. "I thought you might forget to eat," she said. "I didn't," I replied. She smiled. "I know, I just worry." Her phone stayed face up on the counter. When it buzzed, she glanced at it before silencing it. "People mean well," she said lightly. "Sometimes they just don't know how to help." "People," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "Family, neighbors." I watched her closely. "You've been talking about me," I said. She didn't deny it. "I've been advocating for you," she corrected. "There's a difference." That was the first time she admitted anything at all. The following Sunday, I wasn't included in the family lunch. No one told me not to come, I just wasn't invited. When I asked Noah about it later, he sounded uncomfortable. "Rhea thought you might need a quiet day." I looked at the calendar. No appointments, no conflicts, just absence. I started getting my groceries delivered, not because I needed to, because people were watching. One afternoon, a social worker left a card at my door. No explanation, just a name and a number. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every conversation in my head, every moment I'd brushed aside over the last year. I could see now how carefully the groundwork had been laid. This wasn't about one report or one house. It was about narrative. By the end of the week, even I started to feel it, the doubt, the second guessing. Had I forgotten something? Had I repeated myself? That was the most dangerous part. On Friday afternoon, Noah called. "There's been some talk," he said. "About what?" "About whether you should have more support." "Support from whom?" He exhaled. "Professionals." I closed my eyes. "Who suggested that?" He didn't answer. That night I wrote until my hand cramped. I listed every step. Mail, bank, neighbors, family, language, timing. When I finished, I understood something with complete clarity. This was no longer about Rhea convincing people I was unwell. It was about convincing me. And if I didn't act soon, she wouldn't need to do anything else at all. The name came to me slowly, the way most important things do. I didn't look it up right away. I didn't rush to make the call. I let it sit in my head for 2 days, turning it over, testing how it felt alongside everything else I knew. Clara Dunn. I'd met her once before, years earlier, under entirely different circumstances. A friend of Mark's cousin, if I remembered correctly. She worked as a private investigator, though she'd never used that phrase when introducing herself. She'd called it consulting. At the time, it hadn't mattered. Now it did. I found her card in an old address book, tucked between a dentist I no longer saw and a dry cleaner that had closed down. The edges were worn, the number still legible. I called on a Wednesday morning. She answered on the third ring. "Clara," I said. "This is Ellen Ward. I don't know if you remember me." There was a pause. "Mark's wife," she said. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I replied. "I need help." She didn't ask why. "Come by tomorrow," she said. "Bring whatever you have." Her office was above a shipping store in a strip mall that hadn't been updated in decades. The stairs smelled faintly of dust and toner. The door was unmarked. Inside, everything was practical. 2 chairs. A desk. Filing cabinets. No decor meant to reassure. I liked that. I laid everything out. The edited medical report. The bank notices. The lease agreement. Notes from my journal. Printed emails. Screenshots. Dates written in the margins. Clara didn't interrupt. She read carefully, slowly. When she finished, she leaned back and folded her arms. "This isn't random," she said. "No," I replied. "This is grooming," she continued. "Financial, medical, social. You're being positioned." "For what?" "Guardianship," she said. "Or forced placement. Either way, control." I asked her the question I'd been holding back. "Is this common?" She nodded. "More than people think, and almost never loud. It works because it looks like care." She pointed at the medical report. "This is the linchpin. Once doubt is on paper, everything else follows." Clara opened a new file. She wrote Rhea Cole at the top. "First thing we do," she said, "is look backward. The search started with basics. Public records, property transfers, name variations, employment histories. It didn't take long. Rhea Cole hadn't existed very long. Before that, there was Rhea Wells. Before that, Rhea Martinez. Different states, same age range, same handwriting. Clara turned the screen toward me. "See this?" she said. "Same pattern. Elderly household, gradual isolation, asset shift." My stomach tightened. The first confirmed case was in Arizona. A 74-year-old woman, lived alone, widowed, no nearby family. Rhea had entered her life as a wellness coordinator. 6 months later, the woman was declared incompetent. Her home was sold. Rhea disappeared. The second was closer, Nevada. Different last name, same approach. This time the victim had a son. He challenged the guardianship, lost. The medical report had come first. Clara didn't sugarcoat any of it. "She's careful," she said. "She never takes everything, just enough to move on." "And no one stops her?" I asked. "Not without proof," she replied, "and proof takes time." I told her about Fran, about the uncle, about the care facility. Clara wrote the name down. "That helps," she said. "Corroboration matters." Over the next week, we worked quietly. I gave Clara access to everything. She pulled phone records, mapped timelines, cross-referenced clinics, found a pattern in how long Rhea stayed in each situation, 9 months, 12 at most, long enough to establish trust, not long enough to be caught. One afternoon, Clara called me unexpectedly. "I found something," she said. Her voice was different. "What?" "A facility," she said. "In-state, 2 hours from you." I sat down. "One of her former clients is there," Clara continued, "still alive." We drove together the next morning. The facility was clean, quiet, neutral in every possible way. The woman sat near a window, thin, pale, holding a framed photograph. Clara spoke to the nurse first. I waited. The woman's name was Lillian Moore. She looked at me without recognition. "Do you know why you're here?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "They said I needed help," she whispered. "Who?" She thought for a long moment. "Rhea," she said finally. She was very nice. The story unfolded slowly. Rhea had helped with bills, with appointments, with paperwork, then with decisions, then with signatures. "She told me my niece was dangerous," Lillian said, "that she wanted my house." My chest tightened. Clara recorded everything, carefully, legally. Outside, afterward, I couldn't speak for several minutes. "This ends with me," I said finally. "No," Clara replied. "It ends because of you." We discussed next steps: documentation, legal counsel, controlled exposure. "She'll escalate," Clara warned, "once she realizes you're not folding." "I know," I said. That night, back home, I opened my journal. I added a final heading to the page: witnesses. I understood something then that I hadn't before. Rhea hadn't chosen me because I was weak. She'd chosen me because I was careful, because people trusted me, because if I fell, no one would question it. That was the mistake. I wasn't falling, I was documenting, and now I wasn't alone. Rhea didn't wait long. That, more than anything else, told me Clara had been right. 3 days after our visit to the facility, Noah called me before 8 in the morning. His voice sounded careful, already shaped by a conversation I hadn't been part of. "Mum," he said, "can we come by later today? There are a few things we need to talk about." "We?" I asked. A pause. "Rhea and I." "Of course," I said. "Come by whenever you like." I hung up and wrote the time down in my journal. They arrived just after noon. Rhea smiled the moment I opened the door. Noah stood slightly behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes unfocused. He looked like someone bracing for impact. "Hi, Ellen," Rhea said warmly. "We were worried when you didn't answer your phone yesterday." "I was out," I replied. "You didn't leave a message?" Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned. "Oh, well, we just wanted to make sure you were okay." They stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Ria sat immediately, crossing her legs neatly. Noah remained standing until she touched his arm and guided him into the chair beside her. "This isn't an easy conversation," she said, "but it's coming from a place of love." I nodded. "Most things that start that way are." She ignored the comment. "We've noticed some changes," she continued. "You've seemed stressed, overwhelmed, more emotional." I looked at Noah. "Have you noticed these things?" He hesitated. "I just think you've been under a lot of pressure lately." I wrote that down. Ria leaned forward, hands clasped. "We spoke to a specialist," she said, "just to ask questions." "What specialist?" I asked. "A psychiatrist," she replied. "Someone who works with families navigating situations like that." "And what situation would that be?" She sighed softly. "Cognitive decline." The word sat there between us. I didn't argue. That surprised her. "I see," I said. Encouraged, she continued. "We thought it might help to have an informal evaluation. Nothing drastic, just a short stay somewhere quiet." Noah finally looked at me. "It's just to make sure you're safe." "From what?" I asked. Ria answered before he could. "From being overwhelmed." They left an hour later. I wrote everything down. The words they used, the order they used them in. The way Ria answered questions Noah should have answered himself. They came back the next morning. This time, they brought help. I heard the car doors before the knock. 2 additional sets. Deliberate, measured. When I opened the door, Ria stood beside Noah, flanked by a man in a grey suit and a woman in blue scrubs. "This is Dr. Harlan," Ria said. "And Nurse Kim." Dr. Harlan smiled professionally. "We're just here to talk." I stepped aside. The evaluation took place in my living room. Dr. Harlan sat across from me. Nurse Kim stood near the door, clipboard in hand. Ria positioned herself slightly behind them, close enough to hear everything. They asked me the date. I answered. They asked who the president was. I answered. They asked when I'd last eaten. I answered. They asked who handled my finances. I paused. "Myself," I said. Ria shifted in her seat. Then she played the recording. My own voice filled the room, distorted and clipped. "They're watching me. I can't trust anyone. I need to be careful." No context, no explanation, just fragments. "That's not," I began. "It's okay," Ria said gently. "You don't have to explain." Dr. Harlan nodded. "Sometimes stress presents this way." Noah looked sick. I asked to use the bathroom. Inside, I locked the door and sent 2 messages, one to Clara, one to my attorney. Step 2. They're here. When I came back, Ria was already outlining the plan. "Just a short stay," she said. 72 hours, observation only." I nodded. I packed a small bag, not because I had to, because I wanted control over something. The facility was called Silver Glen. Soft colors, locked doors, smiling staff. They took my phone. They inventoried my belongings. They gave me a schedule. I performed. I paused before answering questions. I repeated myself once. I asked where I was after dinner. Not enough to alarm, enough to document. The first night I didn't sleep. The second day I paid attention. Who was allowed outside, who wasn't. Which patients had visitors, which didn't. That afternoon I met Marianne. She was 79, sharp-eyed, quiet. "You don't belong here," she said. "Neither do you," I replied. We spoke in fragments. Her son's girlfriend, paperwork she didn't remember signing, a move she hadn't agreed to, a woman named Ria. I recorded everything. On the 3rd day, my chart changed. Possible early cognitive impairment, recommendation, continued observation. That was the goal. Clara arrived that afternoon, with documents, with authority, with witnesses. The staff avoided my eyes. I was released the same day, no explanation, no apology. That night at home, I wrote until my hand cramped. She had escalated, which meant she was afraid, and afraid people make mistakes. I intended to let her. I closed the journal knowing one thing for certain. The trap hadn't closed on me, it had snapped shut on her. Silver Glen did not feel like a hospital. That was intentional. There were no sharp smells, no harsh lights, no obvious restraints. The walls were painted in muted colors meant to calm, not inform. Hallways curved gently instead of running straight, so you never quite saw where you were headed. Doors locked quietly without the click that warned you something had been taken away. It took me less than an hour to understand how people disappeared there. My room was small but clean. A bed bolted to the floor, a dresser with rounded edges, one window that didn't open more than a few inches. From it, I could see a courtyard with trimmed hedges and a fountain that ran on a timer. Nothing about it suggested danger. That was the danger. A nurse named Angela brought me my schedule. Breakfast at 8, she said. Group session at 10, lunch at noon, quiet hours after dinner. And my phone? I asked. She smiled apologetically. Not during observation. How long is observation? That depends, she said. The first group session was called orientation. 8 of us sat in a circle, all women, all over 70, all looking at one another with polite confusion. A counselor asked us to say our names and why we were there. I don't know, one woman said. My daughter thought it was best, said another. When it was my turn, I said, for evaluation. No one corrected me. I watched carefully, who spoke easily, who hesitated, who deferred when staff entered the room. Lunch was served promptly, soft foods, easily chewed, easily swallowed. No salt packets on the table. I wrote that down. That afternoon, a social worker asked me about my support system. Who helps you make decisions? She asked. I do, I replied. She smiled. And your family? They're involved, I said. Not in decision-making. She wrote something anyway. By the second day, I could see the hierarchy. Patients who nodded along were praised. Patients who questioned were redirected. Patients who resisted were labeled. Marianne found me again during free time. She sat beside me without asking. They don't like questions, she said quietly. I've noticed, I replied. They write while you talk, she added. That's how they decide. We walked the courtyard together. She told me her story in pieces. Her son had remarried, his wife had offered help. Paperwork had appeared, then concern, then doctors, then Silver Glen. I didn't agree to stay, she said. I just stopped agreeing out loud. I believed her. That night, a woman in the room next to mine cried for hours. No one went in. Eventually, she stopped. On the third morning, my medication list changed. A new supplement, a mild sedative described as optional. I declined it. That refusal was noted. During art therapy, I met Helen. She was 82 and sharp in ways that didn't show up on tests. They think because I forget names, I forget facts, she said. Do you? I asked. She smiled. Only the ones that don't matter. Helen had been there 6 months. Her niece controlled her finances. She says it's temporary. Helen said, everything is temporary when you're waiting. I started collecting stories. Not loudly. Mute obviously. I listened during meals, during walks, during quiet hours when people talked because they thought no one was listening. 3 names were repeated, 2 facilities, 1 pattern. I wrote everything down in the margins of my journal. Names, dates, relationships, how each woman had arrived, who signed them in, who visited. On the 4th day, a nurse slipped up. You're doing very well, she said. If your daughter-in-law agrees, we might clear you soon. I don't have a daughter-in-law, I replied. She froze, then smiled too quickly. Family contact, she corrected. That afternoon, Marianne told me something new. She changed her name, she whispered. The woman who brought me here. Changed it from what? Marianne closed her eyes, searching. Something with an R. That night I rewrote everything cleanly. One list, one timeline, one clear pattern. On the 5th day, Clara called the facility. I didn't hear the conversation. I saw the effect. Staff moved faster, voices dropped, files were checked twice. A meeting was called. I sat at the table. Marianne sat beside me. A doctor explained their concerns. Clara explained theirs. Documents changed hands. The room shifted. By evening, 2 residents were approved for discharge reviews. Not just me. Marianne squeezed my hand. Don't forget us, she said. I won't, I replied. When I left Silver Glen, I carried more than my bag. I carried proof. Not enough to shout, enough to build. That night at home, I made copies, 3 sets. One for Clara, one for my lawyer, one for myself. I understood then what Ria had underestimated. It wasn't my memory, it was my patience. And I had just turned her hunting ground into evidence. I didn't go home right away after Silver Glen. I drove past my house twice before pulling over. The engine idled while I sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at the front door like it belonged to someone else. For the first time since this began, I understood how easy it would be to let someone else decide what came next. I didn't. I drove instead. Clara met me at her office that evening. The lights were still on even though it was late, the same stark white glow spilling out onto the parking lot. You shouldn't be alone tonight, she said when I stepped inside. I won't be, I replied, not anymore. We spread everything out again. My notes from Silver Glen, Marianne's timeline, Helen's financial documents, the edited medical report, bank correspondence, phone records Clara had pulled while I was inside. This time the pile looked different. It looked deliberate. She knows you didn't break, Clara said, tapping the edge of the stack. Which means she'll try something else. I know, I replied. She'll want control back, Clara continued. The fastest way is to make you look unreasonable. I nodded. Then I won't be. We planned carefully. At theatrics, at confrontation, a setting where Ria would feel safe, confident, in charge. The invitation came from me. Dinner, just the 3 of us. No lawyers, no investigators, no accusations. I wanted her relaxed. Ria responded within minutes. Of course, we'd love that. She added a heart emoji. Noah hesitated longer. Are you sure this is a good idea? Yes, I replied. I spent the next 2 days preparing, not rehearsing, preparing. I cooked meals that took time, nothing impressive, just familiar. Roasted chicken, potatoes, salad. Food that said normal. I set the table for 3, used the plates Mark liked, poured the wine Ria preferred, not as a gesture, as camouflage. Clara and my attorney arrived an hour early and parked down the street. They didn't come inside. They didn't need to. Ria arrived first. She always did. She wore cream silk and a smile that suggested reconciliation. Ellen, she said warmly, stepping in for a hug. I let her. Noah followed behind her, quieter than usual. He hugged me stiffly. You look good, he said. So do you, I replied. It was true. Dinner unfolded slowly. We talked about neutral things, weather, work, a neighbor's new dog. Ria laughed easily. She was relaxed. Halfway through the meal, she leaned back. I have to say, she said, I'm really glad you invited us. So am I replied. I think things got tense, she continued, and that wasn't healthy for anyone. No, I agreed, it wasn't. She took a sip of wine. You scared us, she said lightly. Did I? You disappeared, you stopped answering messages. You made decisions without including us. I nodded. I did. That kind of impulsivity, she said gently, it worries people. I looked at her. Which people? She smiled. Family. Noah shifted uncomfortably. Rhea, he said. She waved him off. It's okay, we're being honest now. I waited. You've always been very independent, she continued. But independence can turn into isolation. That's true, I said. She smiled, encouraged. And isolation can make people vulnerable. I nodded again. That's why I stepped in, she said. There it was. You stepped in, I repeated. Yes, she said. Someone had to. Noah looked between us. I reached under the table and pressed the recorder. You didn't ask, I said. You didn't seem capable of deciding, she replied without hesitation. Noah froze. I made choices for you, Rhea continued, her tone calm, assured. Because someone needed to. About my money? I asked. Yes. About my health? Yes. About my freedom? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Noah pushed his chair back. What are you saying? He asked. Rhea turned to him, surprised. I'm saying I protected her. By putting her in a facility? Temporarily, she said, until things stabilized. I watched the moment she realized she'd gone too far. You altered my medical file, I said. She didn't deny it. It needed context, she replied. You redirected my mail. You forget things. I sold my own property, I said. That was reckless. Noah looked sick. You told me Mom was declining, he said. She was, Rhea replied. She just didn't know it. The room went very still. That was when the front door opened. Clara stepped inside with my attorney and 2 officers. Rhea stood abruptly. What is this? She demanded. Clara spoke calmly. Rhea Cole, she said, also known as Rhea Wells and Rhea Martinez, you're being detained pending investigation into elder abuse, fraud, and falsification of medical records. Rhea laughed once. This is ridiculous. No one laughed with her. As they read her rights, Rhea turned to Noah. Tell them, she said. Tell them I was helping. Noah didn't move. When they led her out, she didn't look at me. She looked furious. After the door closed, Noah sank into the chair. I didn't know, he said. I know, I replied. I poured us both a glass of water. We sat in silence. Outside, blue lights flashed briefly, then disappeared. That night I slept for the first time in weeks. Not because it was over, but because it had finally turned. The house didn't feel quiet after they took Rhea away. It felt hollow. Not empty, hollow, like something had been pulled out too quickly and left a pressure change behind. Noah sat at the table long after the door closed, staring at the place where she'd been sitting, his hands flat against the wood as if he needed to anchor himself. I didn't know, he said again. I know, I repeated. That was all either of us could manage. The officers returned an hour later. This time they asked questions, dates, names. How long had Rhea been involved in my finances? When had she first suggested the clinic? When had the Maple Street house been discussed? I answered everything, calmly, precisely. Clara sat beside me, occasionally sliding a document across the table when memory needed reinforcement. Noah listened in silence. One of the officers asked him directly, Did you know your wife altered your mother's medical records? Noah swallowed. No. Did you give her permission to manage your mother's assets? No. Did you believe your mother was mentally unfit? Noah closed his eyes. She told me she was declining. Who told you? Rhea. The officer nodded and wrote that down. They left just after midnight. Clara stayed, my attorney stayed. Noah finally spoke. I ruined everything, he said. No, I replied. You were lied to. I should have seen it. She was careful, I said. That was the point. He slept on the couch that night. I didn't ask him to leave. I didn't ask him to stay. The next morning, my phone rang before I finished my coffee. It was the bank. We've removed the internal flags, the representative said, and we've restored your previous account settings. Thank you, I replied. There was a pause. We apologize for any inconvenience. I wrote the time down. By noon, the calls began. Family, neighbors, people who had been quiet for weeks. Some apologized, some asked questions, some simply said they were relieved. I answered what I could. I ignored the rest. The news didn't break loudly. It didn't need to. Ria's arrest showed up as a brief local item. No photos, no details, just a line about an investigation into elder abuse and financial exploitation. That was enough. The first formal interview took place 2 days later. This one was recorded. 2 detectives, 1 prosecutor. Clara, my attorney, me. They walked through everything again. The memory test, the edited report, the facility, the pattern. They showed me copies of records Clara had already seen, aliases, property transfers, closed cases. She's been doing this for years, the prosecutor said, across state lines. Why hasn't anyone stopped her, I asked. Most families don't catch it in time, she replied, and most victims never regain credibility. Noah was interviewed separately. When he came out, his face was grey. I signed things, he said quietly. I didn't read them. That doesn't make you guilty, my attorney said. It didn't make him innocent either. The charges came quickly: conspiracy, fraud, elder abuse, falsification of medical records. Each one carried weight. Ria didn't contact us, she contacted a lawyer. The first hearing was procedural. I didn't attend. I didn't need to see her again to know who she was. Noah moved out 2 weeks later, not because I asked him to, because he said he needed space to think. I don't know who I am without her, he admitted. That's something you get to find out, I said. We began therapy, separately, then together. It was slow, awkward, necessary. 3 more women came forward, 1 from Arizona, 1 from Nevada, 1 from Oregon. Their stories were different, their patterns were not. One of them testified by video. She cried when she spoke, not because she was confused, because she finally believed she wasn't. The plea deal was offered a month later. Ria accepted it. 5 years. Restitution, a permanent record. Noah asked if I felt relieved. I feel clear, I said. The Maple Street house sold quickly. I didn't tell Noah the price. I didn't need to. I packed up my own house slowly, not because I was leaving, because I was choosing. One afternoon, as I boxed old papers, I found Mark's handwriting. A grocery list. A reminder. A joke meant only for me. I sat on the floor and cried. Not because of Ria, because grief waits until it's safe. When the sentencing date was set, I marked it on the calendar. Then I crossed it out. I wasn't going. Noah went. He didn't tell me what she said. I didn't ask. What mattered was this. She could no longer decide anything for anyone else. That was enough. One night, weeks later, Noah came over for dinner. Just dinner. We talked about small things, work, weather, a book he was reading. Before he left, he stopped at the door. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I replied. After he left, I locked the door and stood there for a moment, not bracing, just standing. The house felt solid again. Not because nothing bad had happened, but because I was no longer disappearing inside it. After the legal noise quieted down, time began to behave differently. Days stretched again, not with dread, not with urgency, but with space. The kind of space you only notice once no one is trying to fill it for you. I stayed where I was for a while. People assumed I would leave immediately, that the house had been poisoned by what happened inside it. But houses don't hold guilt, people do. So I stayed. The first weeks were administrative, forms, signatures, meetings, everything Ria had once insisted on handling now came back to me in neat, apologetic packets. Banks reinstated privileges, offices corrected records, clinics updated files with formal addendums. Each correction felt small. Together, they felt like reclamation. Clara checked in often, sometimes with updates, sometimes just to make sure I hadn't disappeared into silence. "You did more than protect yourself," she said during one call. "You stopped a pattern." "For now," I replied. "That matters," she said. Noah and I moved carefully around each other. We had already said the big things. Now we navigated the small ones. Who called first? Who suggested dinner? Which topics stayed off the table? Therapy helped, not in sweeping revelations, in slow clarifications. Our therapist asked questions neither of us had thought to ask ourselves. "When did you stop trusting your own instincts?" she asked Noah once. He didn't answer right away. "I thought trusting Ria meant being loyal," he said finally. "And what did trusting your mother mean?" He looked at me then. "I thought it meant hurting her." I didn't interrupt. We talked about Mark, more than we had in years. About the way he used to whistle while cooking, about how he never remembered passwords, about the quiet he left behind. Grief became something we shared again instead of something that separated us. The Maple Street house was gone, sold, clean, final. I transferred the proceeds into accounts only I controlled. I didn't tell anyone the balance. I didn't need to. One afternoon, I took a drive along the coast, not to the old house, past it. I didn't slow down. That was when I started thinking about leaving, not running, choosing. The condo was smaller than what I was used to. One bedroom, one balcony, windows that faced the water. The building was older. The neighbors kept to themselves. The elevator made a noise that sounded like effort. It felt right. I moved slowly. Not because I was tired, because I was deliberate. Every item I packed had to earn its place. Noah helped, quietly. He didn't ask what I was keeping or why. He carried boxes, he fixed a loose hinge, he stayed for dinner. The first night in the condo, I slept with the balcony door open. The sound of the water filled the room. Not comforting, honest. Letters began arriving, some from women I didn't know, some from families who had read about the case and recognized pieces of it. They didn't ask for advice. They asked if what they were seeing was real. I answered each one, carefully. I didn't tell them what to do. I told them what to notice. One letter stayed with me. It was short. "My father's new wife is doing what yours did. Everyone says I'm imagining it. Am I?" I stared at the page for a long time. Then I wrote back. Noah started rebuilding too. New work, new routines. Therapy continued. He didn't date for a long time. When he finally did, he told me, "She doesn't manage my calendar," he said, almost joking. "That's a good sign," I replied. Clara called one evening as the sun was setting. "Restitution is being processed," she said. "It won't make everyone whole, but some will get something back." "That matters," I said. "Yes," she agreed, "it does." I began walking every morning, same route, same time. People nodded as they passed. No one asked if I was okay. Months passed. Not quickly, not slowly, just steadily. One afternoon, while organizing a drawer, I found my old journal, the one I'd filled during the worst of it. I flipped through the pages, dates, names, patterns, fear, clarity. At the end, I added a new line. "I am not fragile." That night, Noah called. "Do you ever think about her?" he asked. "Rarely," I replied. "What do you think about?" I looked out at the water. "What's next?" I said. The tide came in. The lights along the shore turned on one by one. For the first time in a long while, the future felt like something I was allowed to imagine. The message arrived late at night. I was already in bed. The balcony door cracked open just enough to let the sound of the water reach me. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, then went still. I almost ignored it. Almost. The name wasn't familiar. The message was careful. "I'm sorry to bother you. Clara gave me your number. I think something is happening to my father. I don't know who else to ask." I read it twice. Then I sat up. We spoke the next morning. Her name was Lila. She sounded young, early 20s maybe. Her voice shook when she tried to explain, as if she was afraid of saying the wrong thing out loud. "My dad remarried after my mum died," she said. "At first, everything seemed fine. Better than fine. His wife helped with meals, appointments, bills." I closed my eyes. "And then?" I asked. "And then he stopped calling," she said. "Or when he did, she was always there, listening." I didn't interrupt. "She says I stress him out," Lila continued. "That I bring up the past. That I should give him space." I wrote her words down. "What else?" I asked. "She moved his accounts," Lila said. "Says it's for simplicity. She convinced him to update his will. And last week she asked me if I'd noticed him forgetting things." I leaned back in my chair. We talked for an hour. I asked questions. Not leading ones, specific ones. Who scheduled appointments? Who attended them? Who spoke during them? What language was used? By the time we hung up, Lila was quiet. "You're not imagining this," I said before we ended the call. "But you need to move carefully." "I'm scared," she admitted. "I was too," I said. That didn't stop me. Over the next weeks, I became something I hadn't planned to be, a reference point. People reached out quietly. Note for solutions, for confirmation. Am I overreacting? Does this sound familiar? What should I watch for? I answered each one the same way. I didn't tell them what to do. I told them what I had seen. Patterns, pacing, language. Lila moved quickly. Not recklessly. She documented. She recorded conversations where legal. She requested copies of records. She insisted on being present at appointments. Her father was assessed by an independent doctor. No cognitive decline, no dementia, just exhaustion. His wife left within a month. No charges, no trial, just retreat. Lila sent me a photo. Her father on a bench near the water, smiling awkwardly at the camera, as if unsure he was allowed to look relaxed. "Thank you," she wrote. I placed the phone face down and sat there for a long time. Noah visited the following weekend. He brought takeout. We ate on the balcony, watching boats move slowly along the horizon. "You're busy lately," he said. "I am," I replied. "With people?" "Yes," he nodded. "That makes sense." He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Clara called not long after. "More reports are coming in," she said. "People are connecting dots." "That's good," I said. "It's exhausting," she replied. "Yes," I agreed, "it is." I didn't take on every story. I couldn't. I chose carefully. When I spoke, it was deliberate. Some nights the weight of it pressed down on me. The knowledge of how close I'd come to disappearing. The knowledge of how many others had. On those nights I walked. I followed the water. I let the sound steady me. I thought about Mark, about what he would have said. He would have been furious. Then proud. Then practical. He always was. I never went back to the old house. I didn't need to. What mattered had followed me. One afternoon, I received a small package. No return address. Inside was a seashell, smooth and pale, with words written carefully across it. "You believed me." That was all it said. I placed it on the windowsill. I stopped thinking of what happened as something that was done to me. I started thinking of it as something I survived. People like Ria don't rely on strength. They rely on silence, on doubt, on the way others look away when things become uncomfortable. I had looked, I had listened, I had stayed. On my birthday, Noah called early. "Are you doing anything special?" he asked. "No," I said, "just living." He laughed softly. That evening I stood on the balcony as the sun lowered itself into the water. The sky changed color slowly. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. I thought about the woman I had been when this began, careful, accommodating, quiet. I was still careful, but I was no longer quiet. Love is not surrender, forgiveness is not forgetting, and clarity is the one thing no one can take from you once you claim it. I turned off the light, closed the balcony door, and went to bed. Not waiting, not watching, just living.